So a different type of graph that we're going to look at today is what's known as a line graph. And a line graph, what a line graph measures is frequency over time. So first thing I want to show you here is how to create a line graph. So the table below shows the high temperatures for a week in January. So when you create a line graph, very similar to a bar graph, I'm going to have the days of the week on the bottom here, and you can put this in the review section of your answer sheet. So I got Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then if you notice, I'm going to scale this up the side. The biggest number here is 42. So I'm going to do this in tens. I got 10, 20, 30, and then 40. So when you go to make a line graph, what you're basically doing is instead of putting bars on the graph, you're going to put dots for each one of the days of the week. So 31 for Monday would be like maybe right about here. Tuesday is 39, that might be like right about here. Wednesday would be 28 degrees, that's right about here. Thursday would be 30, that would be here. Friday would be 42, that might be right above the 40. Saturday would be 22, that might be right above the 20. And then we have for Sunday 35, so 35 is going to be in between the 30 and the 40 like this here. So after I plot my points, what I want to do is I'm going to connect each of the points together going from left to right using line segments. So I'm going to go from here to here to here, and then up to here, and then down, and then up. And what the lines are supposed to signify is supposed to make it easier to see where the increases and decreases are as you read this, in this case for each day as you read this from left to right. So a lot of what we're going to look at today has to do with not making a line graph, but if you have a line graph, how to read it. So drop down to your notes section and take a look at these ones here. So just number your paper and you can answer these questions. So the table here gives the number of teens with cell phones. So it breaks it down by age and then how many teens that age have a cell phone. So question number 1 for this says, at what age do most teens have a phone? So you can see here the 17-year-olds have 590, but then all the way over here at the end, you have 642 for the number of 19-year-olds that have a cell phone. So that would be your answer for number 1, would be the 19-year-olds there. So for number 2, it says, what is the total number of cell phones? So in order to answer that question, what I basically have to do is I got to take all these numbers and I got to add them together for each of the different age groups. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to need that total to do some different things with percents and things of that nature. So I'm going to take these numbers, I'm going to get my calculator here, and I'm going to add these numbers up. So I got here 229, right, plus, that's the 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds would be 273, plus the 15-year-olds, which would be 341, plus for the 16-year-olds, I got 430, and then for the 17-year-olds, I have 590. For the 18-year-olds, I have 530. And then for the 19-year-olds, I have 642. So when I add those together, I get 3035. So that's the total for this. 3035. And I'm going to need that to answer any kind of questions that come up about percentages. So that's the answer for number 2. For number 3, the question says, what percentage of 13-year-olds have a phone? So to find that, I want to take first the number of 13-year-olds, which would be 229. So I'm going to do 229 divided by the total times 100. So I'm going to take my calculator here. So I got 229 divided by the total times 100. So once again, we're going to round this to the nearest percent. So since this is 7.5%, so since it's 0.5, we'll call this 8%. So that's what I got there for number 3. For number 4, what is the difference in phones between 13 and 16-year-olds? So to answer that question, first I want to figure out what's the difference between those two. So I got 430 for the number of 16-year-olds, and then I have 229 for the number of 13-year-olds. So if I do 430 minus 229, the answer to this would be 201. So that's the difference in the number of cell phones between the 16 and the 13-year-olds. Question 15 says, what is the ratio of phones owned between the 19 to the 14-year-olds? So remember, when we're talking about writing a ratio, we're talking about taking those two age groups and writing it as a fraction. So I want to say the number of 19-year-olds, which would be 642, over the number of 14-year-olds, which would be 273. And I'm just going to leave that ratio just like that, 642 to 273. So that's the answer for number 5. Number 6 says, between what 2 years did the number of phones owned increase the most? So I'm looking for, in the numbers here, where did we see the biggest increase? And usually that's sort of the biggest line that jumps up from left to right. So if you notice, the biggest increase here jumped from between 16 and 17-year-olds. That's where we saw the biggest increase in the number of phones that were owned. So that's your answer for number 6 there. And number 7, did the number of phones owned decrease at all? So if you look here, there was a decrease in the number of phones between 17 and 18-year-olds. It went from 590 to 530, and that's the only decrease that we see that's in the graph there. And that's the answer for number 7. So that's one of the different types of line graph type questions that we're going to look at today. Another one is this, and this is what's known as a double line graph. So you can see here there's two different line graphs going on, and here's sort of the color code for it at the bottom here. You have Honeycomb Bakery kind of in the lighter color, Nest Bakery in the darker color. And question number 8 says, how many loaves of bread were baked by Honeycomb Bakery on Saturday? So Honeycomb is the lighter graph, so here's Saturday, here's Honeycomb right there. There's the point for that, so we would say the answer for that would be 210. So that would be the answer for number 8. Number 9 says, which bakery baked the lowest amount on Friday? So here's Friday, and here's Honeycomb Bakery, here's Nest Bakery. So it looks like here that Honeycomb Bakery was the one that baked the least amount on Friday, or loaves of bread anyway. So that's the answer for number 9. For number 10, how many more loaves of bread were baked by Nest than Honeycomb on Friday? So on Friday, Honeycomb baked 60 loaves of bread, whereas Nest baked 150 loaves. So if we did 150 minus the 60, the answer to that would be 90. So that's the answer for number 10. Number 11 says, how many loaves did Nest Bakery make for the week? So what I want to do there is I want to add all these numbers up. So here I got for Nest, I got 60 on Monday, right? I have 150 on Tuesday. I have 90 on Wednesday. I have 210 on Thursday. 150 on Friday, and then on Saturday it looks like they did 270. So I want to take those numbers, I'm going to add them all together. So I got here, I got 60 plus 150 plus 90 plus 210 plus 150 plus 270. So if I put all of those together, we would say that the Nest Bakery did 930 loaves of bread for the week. Right, so we'll make a note of that up here. So that's the answer for number 11. Number 12 says, what percentage of Nest Bakery loaves were made on Thursday? So Thursday they did 210 loaves. So to convert that to a percent, I want to do 210 divided by 930 times 100. Right, so when I take my calculator here, right, I got 210 divided by 930 times 100. And when I do that, this comes out to be roughly 22.5%. So since that's 0.5, we'll call this 23%. So that would be the answer for number 12. Number 13, it says, on what day was the difference in loaves made the greatest? So we're basically looking at on what day did they have sort of the biggest difference in the number of loaves that they made. So if you look here, and I'm basically looking at where's the biggest gap between the two different bakeries. So if you look here on Wednesday, you have Nest Bakery that made 90, you have Honeycomb Bakery that made 180. That's a difference of 90 loaves for Wednesday. On Thursday, they have here 210 for Nest Bakery, and then we have for the Honeycomb Bakery, they made 120, which is also a difference of 90. And then if you look also at Friday, they have 150 for Nest, you have 60 for For honeycomb, which is also a difference of 90, so when it says on what day was the difference in the loaves the greatest, well, it could be any day, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, all had the same difference that was each equal to 90, and none of the other days had a bigger difference than that. So your answer is basically all three of those days for number 13. And then number 14 says, what is the ratio of the number of loaves baked by honeycomb to the number of loaves baked by Nest on Wednesday? So if we're talking about how many loaves honeycomb made on Wednesday, so here's Wednesday, honeycomb made 180 loaves, so that would be 180 over the number of loaves that Nest made, which would be 90, and I'm just going to leave it just like that as a ratio, 180 over 90. So that's the answer for number 14. So that's an example of what's known as a double line graph. So it's a little bit different than this example we did here where it's sort of just a single line. This is the more common type of line graph, but there's also different things that we can do with double line graphs for making comparisons. So what you're going to do now is take your answer sheet, flip it over, and begin to work on practice problems 2.3H.